Welcome to the European Central Bank. In Frankfurt, Germany, in the European Union, made up of 27 countries. The EU's population of 494 million is larger than that of the United States, which has 300 million people and almost 4 times the size of Japan's. In terms of economic output, the EU and the US each account for about 20% of the world total. Japan accounts for around 6%. Output per head comes out at €24,100 per year for the EU, €37,300 for the United States, and €27,500 for Japan. Within the EU, a number of countries have decided to share a single currency, the euro. They have transferred authority over monetary policy to the European Central Bank, which works together with the country's national central banks within the euro system. The countries participating in this monetary union now form a highly integrated economy known as the euro area. Within the euro area, the single currency ensures price transparency, meaning that prices can be compared easily. This improves competitiveness by making it simpler to find the cheapest supplier of a product or service. The single currency also eliminates the risk of currency fluctuations, making cross-border investment and trade within the euro area easier. Financial markets are able to operate more effectively too, as the euro facilitates their integration. So a single currency is good for business. And it's also good for the people who find it easier to travel, to shop and to work in other euro area countries, who find prices more stable and investments more predictable. Bringing together different countries with different traditions and getting them to cooperate is a bold endeavor. To help achieve this goal, Europe has established a number of institutions, the most recent of which is the European Central Bank.
After 2 world wars in less than a century, many people sought the means to prevent such devastation from happening again. One idea put forward by a French civil servant, Jean Monnet, and taken up by France's foreign minister at the time, Robert Schuman, was to pool the industries that were seen as the engines of war: coal and steel.
L'Europe ne se fera pas d'un coup, ni dans une construction d'ensemble. Elle se fera par des réalisations concrètes, créant d'abord une solidarité de fait.
In 1951, 6 countries, France, Germany, Belgium, Italy, Luxembourg and the Netherlands, signed the Treaty of Paris, creating the European Coal and Steel Community, governed by the first supranational body, the High Authority. Europe's leaders wanted to go further, so on the 25th of March 1957, they signed the Treaties of Rome, creating the EEC, the European Economic Community, and Euratom, the European Atomic Energy Community. In 1968, the Prime Minister of Luxembourg, Pierre Werner, proposed a single currency. The Werner Report, published in 1970, called for step-by-step progress towards monetary union within 10 years. But a year later, the US devalued the dollar. Then there was an oil crisis and the Werner plan was shelved. So instead of a monetary union, some countries in Europe introduced what was called the currency snake, which set limits on exchange rate fluctuations, both against a number of European currencies and against the dollar. Between its creation in 1972 and its demise 7 years later, the snake saw a lot of exchange rate adjustments and a veritable revolving door of countries joining, leaving, and then rejoining again. In 1979, the push for economic and monetary union was revived. The European monetary system was born and the European currency unit, or ECU, was created. The ECU, however, was only a virtual currency, a mere unit of account. Within the European monetary system, the member states agreed to keep their currencies within a fluctuation band of 2.25%, around a central reference rate. This was the start of the exchange rate mechanism. The governments of the member states didn't always find it easy. There were 37 currency realignments between 1979 and 1987. In 1986, the member states signed the Single European Act, which marked the first substantial changes to the Treaty of Rome. The objective of the Single Act was to create a true internal market by 1993, based on the free circulation of goods, people, services and capital, with no non-tariff barriers. In 1988, the then President of the European Commission, Jacques Delors, was appointed to chair a committee whose findings were to become the basis of the Maastricht Treaty. The Delors report envisaged a three-stage progression towards economic and monetary union. Stage 1 focused on increasing the cooperation among central banks and was adopted as of the 1st of July 1990, when the movement of capital in the European community was liberalized completely. The Treaty on European Union was then signed in Maastricht on the 7th of February 1992. It laid out the framework and the further steps for achieving economic and monetary union and making it work. The treaty established 1994 as the beginning of Stage 2. This phase would bring about economic convergence, as well as the institutions and procedures needed to achieve it. The treaty set out the convergence criteria which member states had to fulfill in order to be considered ready for the adoption of the single currency. Stage 2 saw the creation of the European Monetary Institute, which began its work in Frankfurt on the 1st of January 1994. The EMI carried out all the preparatory work necessary for the ECB to assume its responsibility for monetary policy. In May 1998, EU leaders and finance ministers met in Brussels to decide which states had reached a sufficient degree of convergence and could therefore participate in the monetary union. They also appointed the first president of the ECB, Willem Duisenberg, and the other members of the first executive board. The ECB was established on the 1st of June 1998, replacing the EMI and taking over its Frankfurt offices. Together with all the national central banks of the member states of the European Union, the ECB came to form the European system of central banks. On the night of the 31st of December 1998, the euro was born, and the conversion rates of the currencies participating in it became irrevocably fixed. Stage 3 began on the 1st of January 1999, when the single currency was launched and authority over monetary policy was transferred from national central banks to the Governing Council of the European Central Bank. 3 years later, on the 1st of January 2002, the new banknotes and coins were introduced amid widespread celebrations. People queued at cash dispensers to be among the first to have the new currency in their pockets. For 3 years, the euro had been the official currency for banks, businesses and the financial markets. But now it belonged to everyone.
The European Central Bank is an institution with some unique characteristics, partly because it oversees an area whose borders extend beyond those of a single state. Yet it still fulfills the role of any other central bank. First and foremost, its task is to maintain price stability. It is the ultimate guardian of the value of money. The money we have in our pockets is just paper or base metal, but as long as a currency retains public confidence, the intrinsic value of banknotes and coins is irrelevant. Its value is derived solely from its acceptance as a medium of exchange. However, that has not always been the case. Until early last century, most major economies had adopted the gold standard. Banknotes in circulation literally represented a share in a country's gold reserves. Theoretically, a central bank could be called upon to exchange any banknote for its value in gold. So it was the task of the central banks to ensure they kept sufficient gold reserves to back the currency in circulation. Today, however, money derives its value from its purchasing power, the value of the goods you can buy with it. So the job of a modern central bank is mainly to make sure that the amount of money circulating in an economy is properly balanced against the value of the goods that it can purchase. In that way, the value of the currency can be protected. But a modern economic system is enormously complicated, and the ECB, like other central banks, is involved in a wide range of activities to ensure it all works. The ECB defines and conducts monetary policy within the euro area. It issues banknotes. It conducts operations in the foreign exchange market, buying and selling currencies as it deems appropriate, and it holds and manages reserves of foreign currencies. It also helps to make sure that all credit institutions are sufficiently sound and trustworthy, and to preserve the stability of the whole financial system. Furthermore, it ensures the smooth functioning of payment systems throughout the euro area, so that transactions between banks can be conducted swiftly and effectively. The ECB does all this in close cooperation with the national central banks of the euro area. Together, they form what is called the euro system. In fact, the governors of these national central banks, together with the 6 members of the ECB's executive board, form the governing council of the ECB, its supreme decision-making body. The members of the Eurosystem meet regularly to coordinate and discuss their activities in a number of committees made up of experts from departments within the ECB and the national central banks. The national central banks are also the ECB's shareholders. Shares are attributed according to the population and GDP of each country. But this does not mean that larger member states have a greater say in ECB decisions than smaller ones. In fact, the ECB is a truly supranational institution. Its staff and board members are not there to defend the interests of any individual member state, but to make the best decisions in the interest of all euro area citizens. Having a single central bank for such a vast area, which covers different states with different traditions, has never been done before. And yet, the euro is a reality, and prices within the euro area remain stable, just as the Treaty on European Union demands.
Many of us can remember when prices kept rising, when every time we went to buy something it was more expensive than the time before. Fortunately, the days of persistently high inflation in Europe are at an end. Keeping prices stable is the primary objective of the euro system as stated in the Treaty on European Union. And with good reason, since price stability helps to achieve sustainable higher levels of economic activity and employment through an efficient and productive use of resources. In order to measure price developments, the ECB uses an assessment of what people are paying for goods and services in the euro area called the Harmonized Index of Consumer Prices, or HICP. The HICP is calculated by Eurostat, the European Union's statistical office, which is in Luxembourg. It's based on a basket of prices, almost 2/3 of it made up of goods such as food, industrial products, and energy. The remaining third consists of services. The objective given in the treaty was further defined by the ECB, which decided that price stability should mean a year-on-year increase in euro area consumer prices of below 2%. The ECB also announced that it aims to maintain the inflation rate below 2%, but close to 2%. Although any amount of inflation carries a cost, a rate of inflation close to 2% provides a safety margin against deflation, which could also be very damaging. However, the ECB's influence on price levels is not immediate, as its actions have a delayed effect on the economy of between 1 and 3 years. That's why it aims to maintain price stability over the medium term, always looking some way ahead. In order to do that, it relies on both an economic and monetary analysis, which represent the two pillars of its strategy. The information gathered in this way is carefully assessed and cross-checked. As part of the economic analysis, the ECB looks at numerous key economic and financial indicators, such as wages, oil prices, the exchange rate, long-term interest rates, measures on real activity and fiscal policy, surveys of business and consumer confidence, house prices, and trends in financial markets. The economic analysis also contains an assessment of any shocks affecting the euro area economy and projections of key macroeconomic variables. In fact, there are a variety of factors that can influence the future level of prices in the short to medium term. However, long-term ongoing inflation can only take place to the extent that the central bank allows it by increasing the amount of money in circulation. If the amount of money in circulation increases too fast in relation to the quantity of goods available, then over a long-term perspective, the prices of those goods will tend to increase. That's exactly the reason why the economic analysis is complemented by the monetary analysis. The monetary analysis is based on a measure of the quantity of money in circulation called M3, which includes banknotes as well as bank deposits and other items which can easily be converted into cash. Monetary analysis serves mainly as a means of cross-checking, from a longer-term perspective, the short to medium-term indications obtained through the economic analysis. Based on the full set of information provided by the economic and monetary analysis, the ECB's Governing Council makes an overall assessment of the risks to price stability and can take action to influence future developments.
Knowing what's going on in the economy is one thing, influencing it is quite another. But there would be no point in knowing what's going on unless the instruments also existed to exert an element of control. Central banks are in daily contact with commercial banks and other financial institutions and conduct a number of operations with them. A central bank is effectively a bank's bank. Just as members of the public hold accounts with commercial banks, so commercial banks hold accounts with central banks. Through these accounts, all the operations between central banks and commercial banks are conducted, and it's through these same accounts that transactions take place in the money market. A wholesale market where banks lend each other huge amounts of money for short periods of time. The European Central Bank, like other central banks, can influence the level of interest rates in the money market. The conditions there have a considerable impact on all other interest rates, and in turn on the whole economy through a variety of channels, in a complex process known as the transmission mechanism of monetary policy. The ECB has a range of monetary policy instruments at its disposal. The most important of these are the main refinancing operations. In these operations, the ECB, through the national central banks, lends money for a very limited period of time to the commercial banks, which bid for it in a weekly tender procedure. In technical terms, this is what is known as providing liquidity to the market. On these loans, the commercial banks pay interest and have to provide the euro system with a guarantee in the form of appropriate financial assets. When the transaction reaches maturity, the banks pay back the loans and the assets used as guarantees are returned to them. The ECB sets what's called a minimum bid rate for the main refinancing operations, meaning that it won't provide liquidity to banks at a lower rate. The minimum bid rate is set once a month by the ECB's Governing Council. Banks need liquidity to finance their operations, so they bid for it in a weekly tendering procedure. These bids are normally collected from Monday afternoon through to early Tuesday morning. They're first analysed by a liquidity committee. The Liquidity Committee submits a proposal to the Executive Board, which evaluates it and then sets the total amount of funds to be allocated. The banks offering the highest interest rates in return for liquidity will be served first, until the full amount has been allocated. The banks that fail to obtain funds from the central bank have to borrow them in the money market. However, rates in the money market are usually quite close to the minimum bid rate set by the ECB, proving that this is an effective instrument with which to influence market rates. Banks can also borrow from or deposit money with a central bank as and when they need, for any reason, without waiting for the ECB to carry out market operations. Through what's called the marginal lending facility, banks can borrow money, while the deposit facility permits them to deposit surplus funds. These are also called standing facilities because they're always available. The rate on the marginal lending facility is higher than the minimum bid rate, while the rate on the deposit facility is lower. These rates are set monthly by the Governing Council when the minimum bid rate for the main refinancing operations is set. Another important instrument is the minimum reserve requirement, which is the minimum amount of average liquidity that the ECB requires banks to hold over a certain period of time. This requirement helps to stabilize money market rates and increases the dependence of banks on the liquidity provided by the ECB. For the transmission mechanism to work, however, it's not just enough to have an appropriate set of instruments. There must also be a properly functioning money market, meaning banks must be able to transfer huge amounts of money to each other at low cost. Here too, the ECB plays a major role through its involvement in Target 2, which stands for Trans-European Automated Real-Time Gross Settlement Express Transfer, an automated payment system set up to ensure the fast and smooth settlement of interbank transactions in the euro area. Target 2 replaced the decentralized structure of the target system with a single platform at the end of 2007. With its advanced features, Target 2 is one of the most modern real-time large-value payment systems in the world. The ECB, in cooperation with the national central banks, constantly monitors the flow of payments through the system and is ready to take action should the flow ever, for any reason, be obstructed.
The European Central Bank has 3 governing bodies. The most senior one in terms of authority is the Governing Council. It's made up of all the members of the Executive Board, as well as the governors of the national central banks of the euro area. The Governing Council meets twice a month, the first meeting being devoted to monetary policy and the second to the management of the ECB. The Governing Council takes all the key decisions related to the tasks of the euro system as defined by the treaty, from the definition of the monetary policy strategy and its implementation to the decisions on the number and denomination of banknotes, from issues relating to the payment system to the management of reserves and foreign exchange market operations. In the Governing Council, the general rule is that the principle of one person, one vote applies, in line with the supranational nature of the ECB. Except for issues concerning the ECB's own capital, there is no weighted voting. In the event that the Governing Council's opinion is equally divided, the President has the casting vote.
Here we go. Hello.
The members of the Governing Council represent the euro area as a whole, not the interest of their own countries. After the first meeting each month, the monetary policy decisions that have been taken are explained at a press conference, which is accessible to the public and the media live over the internet.
Again, shape the outlook, assuming
the President and Vice President give a detailed account of the debate in the Governing Council and respond to journalists' questions. This makes the ECB transparent and open to the scrutiny of the media and the public. Another of the ECB's governing bodies is the General Council. This is structured rather differently and includes the President and Vice President of the ECB, together with the governors of the national central banks of all the EU member states, not just those that have adopted the euro. The other members of the Executive Board participate as observers. Meetings of the General Council are normally held once every 3 months. This body has an advisory role and debates matters of interest to the euro area countries and the EU as a whole, such as the progress of some of its members towards economic convergence with the euro area. Finally, there's the Executive Board, which comprises the President, the Vice President and 4 other members. It is the President of the ECB who chairs meetings of the Governing Council, the General Council and the Executive Board itself. The Executive Board, which meets every Tuesday, is responsible for implementing the monetary policy formulated by the Governing Council. It is the role of the Executive Board to give appropriate instructions to the national central banks to achieve that goal, in addition to preparing the meetings of the Governing Council and managing the day-to-day business of the ECB. The Executive Board of the ECB is a collegiate body, and all its members share the same responsibility for its decisions.
The European Central Bank is the center of the euro system, which is made up of the European Central Bank and the national central banks of the euro area. It is the captain of the European monetary team with a clear mandate to ensure price stability. In the performance of our tasks to the service of Europe, we strive for the highest possible levels of competence and integrity of effectiveness and efficiency and of transparency and team spirit.
The European heads of state or government appoint the executive board of the ECB following a recommendation from the EU Council after it has consulted the European Parliament and the ECB's governing council. Prospective members face questioning by the relevant committee of the European Parliament before their appointments are made. Board members are appointed for 8 years. Periodically, old hands give way to new, who will bring their own different and unique experience to the service of the institution.
In order for the European Central Bank and the national central banks to perform their tasks under the treaty, independence is essential. Neither the ECB nor the national central banks, nor any member of their decision-making bodies is allowed to seek or accept instructions from any external body whatsoever. For their part, European Union institutions and all member state governments are bound by the treaty never to seek to influence the decision-makers of the ECB or the national central banks. The treaty that guarantees its independence also clearly states the ECB's reporting obligations. It has to publish an annual report and weekly financial statements of the Eurosystem. It also publishes monthly bulletins with in-depth analyses of economic developments in the euro area and wide-ranging articles, as well as reports on the ECB's activities. The European Parliament is thoroughly informed about the work of the ECB. The ECB's president attends the Parliament in person when the annual report is debated at a full plenary session. He's called on to account for the bank's decisions and actions, even though the parliamentarians cannot influence them. Similarly, the President appears 4 times a year before the European Parliament's Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs.
Respect to the Stability and Growth Pact.
To support the ECB's cooperation with the European Commission and ECOFIN, the EU's Council of Economic and Finance Ministers, a member of the European Commission and the President of ECOFIN are entitled to participate in meetings of the ECB's Governing Council and General Council, although they don't have the right to vote. By the same token, the President of the ECB has the right to attend ECOFIN meetings when matters relating to the ECB's tasks are under discussion, although he too is not allowed to vote. Another body in which the ECB's President takes part is the Eurogroup, which brings together the finance ministers of the euro area countries and representatives from the Commission and the ECB. Meetings are held monthly, normally the day before an ECOFIN meeting, and take the form of open exchanges of views on issues of common interest. Outside the EU, the ECB has established relations with several international financial institutions, such as the Bank for International Settlements, the OECD, and the International Monetary Fund. The ECB's permanent representative in Washington participates in meetings of the IMF Executive Board when the global economy or developments in individual euro area countries are discussed. The ECB also takes part in the activities of several other bodies. For example, its president attends the meetings of the finance ministers and central bank governors of the G7, G10 and G20 countries. In fact, the ECB maintains a continuous dialogue with central banks and other financial institutions around the world, so that together they can contribute to the smooth running of the global economy.
The euro is now in regular daily use by around 320 million European citizens, allowing them to travel between euro area countries without the costly and troublesome business of having to change their money each time they cross a border. The design of the euro, as we know it today, originated several years ago. In 1996, the European Monetary Institute, forerunner of the European Central Bank, organized a competition inviting banknote designers to submit designs for a series of 7 banknotes. After seeking the views of the public and of a panel of experts, the EMI chose the winning designs produced by Robert Kalina of the Austrian Central Bank. The designs chosen represent the architectural styles of 7 periods in European history: Classical, Romanesque, Gothic, Renaissance, Baroque and Rococo, the Age of Iron and Glass, and the 20th century. Banknotes have to be visually appealing and easily recognizable, while containing security features to make forgery as difficult as possible. For lower denomination notes, these features include watermarks, security threads, hologram stripes, and iridescent strips. For higher value notes, in addition to the watermarks and security threads, there are hologram patches and numerals that change color when the notes are tilted. Euro banknotes have been produced at printing works across the EU since summer 1999. At the time of the euro cash changeover, the national central banks had more than 15 billion notes ready for use. Laid out side by side, they would have covered an area the size of 15,000 football pitches. New banknotes have to be produced to replace worn ones. Lower denomination notes only last a year or 2, while higher denominations, which change hands less frequently, can last up to 8 or more years. Banknotes have a tendency to migrate between countries. That's because of tourism and business travel, as people take money with them to spend while they're away. Unchecked, such migration would lead to a shortage of banknotes in some countries and larger stocks than needed in others. So bulk transfers are organized by the ECB, together with the Eurosystem national central banks, and surplus notes are taken from the countries where they've accumulated to those where they're needed. Like other currencies around the world, the euro has also become a target for counterfeiters. The ECB keeps a large database of counterfeit banknotes, helps train those handling banknotes to spot fakes, and also works closely with Europol and Interpol. The ECB has experts who analyze the various forgeries and help the law enforcement agencies to identify the types of paper, foil and thread that have been used, and the techniques employed in the printing process. In addition to this painstaking work, the ECB also runs an international counterfeit deterrent center involving 26 national central banks which cooperate on ways to deter counterfeiting and look at the means to make simple color copying and computer printing more difficult. While the ECB and the Eurosystem national central banks are responsible for producing the euro banknotes, responsibility for the production of euro coins lies with the governments of the euro area countries. More than 51 billion coins with a face value of around 16 billion euros were minted for the euro cash changeover. However, the Governing Council of the ECB approves the overall value of coins to be issued. Unlike the euro banknotes, the euro coin designs vary from country to country. On one side they have common designs, while the other bears national symbols. The common designs of the coins were the work of Luc Loix of the Royal Belgian Mint and reflect the unity of the European Union.
Currently, 15 EU member states share the euro, but more countries will join the euro area in the future. While the UK and Denmark were granted the right to choose whether or not to adopt the euro when the Maastricht Treaty was negotiated, all the other EU member states are committed to joining the euro area at some stage. In order to qualify for euro area membership, the countries must meet the economic convergence criteria that were laid down in the Maastricht Treaty. These criteria relate to price stability, public finance discipline, exchange rate stability, and long-term interest rates. An important step during the economic convergence process is membership of the exchange rate mechanism, known as ERM2. ERM2 was designed to link the currencies of non-euro area member states to the euro. The currencies in it must stay within a fluctuation band of plus or minus 15%. The currencies must remain stable in the mechanism for at least 2 years before euro area membership. Meanwhile, their national central banks work closely with the ECB. The final decision on a country's readiness is taken by the EU heads of state or governments following convergence reports from both the ECB and the European Commission. Thus, in the future, the euro area will look quite different from the way it does today as new countries adopt the single currency. The ECB's headquarters will look different too. The project to create new premises for the ECB is progressing. The design is the work of Austrian architects Coop Himmelblau of Vienna, chosen in January 2005 by the ECB's Governing Council from the 3 prize-winning designs submitted to the International Urban Planning and Architectural Design Competition. The 3 prize winners were selected in February 2004 by an international jury out of 71 submitted design proposals. The competition was conducted in 2 phases, with a pre-selection of 80 out of more than 300 candidates from 31 countries worldwide. The ECB's new premises will be situated on the site of Frankfurt's former Großmarkthalle, in the east of Frankfurt, on the River Main. The existing building of the Großmarkthalle will be preserved and incorporated into the new design. The ECB's new premises are scheduled for completion by the end of 2011. In the Governing Council's view, and in line with the statement of the architect, the ECB's new headquarters is expected to become a symbol of unity, a symbol of a united Europe and its single currency.